Evening everyone. So it's still hot, so I haven't got lots of lights on around me. If I start going speckly, I might just turn off the green screeny thing. So welcome to anyone who may be new. We'll get started, obviously. There's a couple of things potentially to talk about. One thing, hi Brandon, that if you are new, as I say, you can just ask anything about anything, as long as it's reasonably vaguely Warcraft related. I annoyed Blizzard yesterday by trying to help them. That was fun. So some people have been asking already. Basically, I put a video out yesterday on the Titan forging weapons, and they were annoyed. What they were annoyed about was the piece of information that they didn't want generally known, but it was the piece of information that was actually helping them out. You know, I can understand it if I was saying something that wasn't widely known as an attack on them, because that's like chopping someone's arm off and then beating them over the head with their own arm. No one wants that. That's just rude. But this was the equivalent of seeing someone come out of the toilets with their skirt tucked into their knickers and telling them before everyone started putting it on Twitter. Because what is known, because players have found this out, is that weapons of Titan forging up to plus 15. What is also known is that Ian Hazakost has said it'll not go beyond plus 10, or that was the current thinking. What is also known is that you can sim to see how that compares to like having Warforged items everywhere else. So all of that, you know, if I'd have just done a video on all that, it would have actually been attacking Blizzard. But then someone put me straight in terms of the likelihood of the Warforged pieces compared to the Titan Forged weapon, which is the thing that made it okay, and that's what they weren't happy about. I almost actually just redid a completely different video where I was doing what is out there in the public domain and having a good old moan about them and stoking up like all sorts of shit just out of sheer petulance. But then I remembered that I'm supposed to be old and mature now, and I'm not supposed to be petulant. So good evening everyone, Eddie, Gareth, Ajax. So yes. The other thing, I'll probably just get out at the start of this video in case people are sort of watching a bit and before they disappear off because it gets boring. Not that it ever gets boring, obviously. Someone asked me something on Twitter. I can't find it now. But for any that may not know yet, I am not going to be Mythic raiding in BfA. It's just not worth it. I'd been pondering it anyway, and I've just decided it's not worth it. Not that I wouldn't enjoy the Mythic raiding. I enjoy the Mythic raiding. You know, I don't think my enjoyment of endgame raiding has ever diminished over the course of WoW. But the downsides to it have just gone up and up and up and up and up. So yes. In terms of effects on the channel, obviously I won't be able to offer any sort of guidance on Mythic raid bosses. Duh, because I won't be doing them. In all of the respects, it's possible that I'd be able to, or I would certainly intend to do everything else. We'll just have to see, you know, how much I'm able to do. I mean, obviously time won't be a factor. I'll have more time to do the content or to do a better job of the content. Would I be going back to Alliance? Well, it all depends. My intention now, not immediately, because obviously I'm not going anywhere immediately, because I said to the guild, I'm not going to disappear off. You know, they still need people up until BfA launches, because it's summer, people have gone off on holiday and stuff like that. But my intention would be to try and find a guild where I can Mythic raid, not Mythic raid, no Mythic raid, Heroic raid, and do Mythic plus dungeons. Not pushing and pushing and pushing, just getting the plus 10 done and the plus 15. But I want a guild where I'd be able to do that in an efficient manner, but also in a casual manner, so that I'm not having to dedicate a certain night each week, stuff like that. Now, I don't know how easy it will be to find such a guild. that will be something to think about in a few weeks. Now, obviously, that will determine whether I would end up staying as Horde or as going as Alliance. Obviously, doing the content I want to do takes precedence over the faction. Yes, I'd prefer to be Alliance, but, you know, content takes precedence. So, no, Brandon, I won't be doing Mythic raiding next expansion. Yeah. Now, the weekend range from Discord always works. Well, I mean, you know, I don't know how it'll work out as BfA goes on as well with the communities thing. The community, you know, if you can't find a guild that does both the Mythic Plus dungeons and the raids at times when I'd want to do them, you know, the communities feature potentially gives you the option of joining one guild where you can do one of those things and then join a community that does the other, maybe. Anything to avoid pugs. What I absolutely don't want to be doing is sat around on a Saturday for 8 hours trying to get myself into a heroic pug that then ends up killing 3 bosses and taking 5 hours to do it. Just because I'm not going to be doing mythic raiding doesn't mean to say I want to be pissing about wiping on heroic bosses, or at least no more than necessary, which after the first couple of weeks should be not at all, quite frankly. I didn't used to mind pugs. Like when you used to almost have to pug dungeons in vanilla, they were all right. They were fine. You know, they were quite nice. Mythic Plus seems to be the strategy overall for viewing competition. Yeah, well, didn't Blizzard say recently as well that they've... I'm trying to think, was it... I know obviously they've done a Q&A last week, but I'm not sure it was at the Q&A they said this. I think it might have been in a blue post somewhere. But something about... Even though Ian Hazacosta has said something about Mythic raiding should give you the best rewards because, you know, it takes the most organisation, blah, 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 blah. But it's not clear it is giving the best rewards for a start. But the second thing is that I'm pretty sure recently they've said something about, you know, Mythic raiding and Mythic Plus dungeons being sort of on par. You know, which would be good for, you know, some people will certainly like that. Going for more casual on Mythic isn't an option. No, that's worse. Like people, there's no... The reason, I mean, there's a lot of downsides that have crept up that have caused me to stop doing it. And not all of which are directly related to Mythic raiding. Some of it's indirectly. In fact, to be honest, the biggest thing for me, there's lots of things. I could go on, you know, there's like 20 things. I could easily come up with a list of 20 things that are all drawbacks. Some are quite small, some are quite big, but cumulatively, they've just become too big. But one of the big things that was introduced during Legion was the concept of, okay, you have your raid days. These are the days you commit to. There's other stuff to do outside of raiding. There always was, like farming a little bit so you've got money for consumables, all that sort of stuff. So, but you did that on an ad hoc basis. You did it as and when you were free. But in Legion, all of a sudden, you had to do such a quantity of group content, Mythic Plus dungeons, and then, of course, we're also going to have islands thrown into the mix as well, that you're effectively going to have to make yourself available at other times outside of the raid times. So, you know, and you're just having to add too much. But the idea of casual Mythic content, which means that's worse. It's less effort to do Mythic raiding. The more hardcore you do it, the less effort it is. I mean, okay, you look at the likes of Method at the very top, the extreme end, and you think to yourself, well, it's hardly low effort, is it? Well, no, and there's a lot of preparation that goes into it and all the rest of it. But the time they spend raiding is way less than the time spent raiding by someone who ends up with World 1000. It's always less effort to push and do it more seriously. So the whole concept of doing it more casually is the problem. That's the reason I changed guilds in the first place. I didn't have a problem in my last guild. I liked the people in my last guild. I liked the people in the guild before that. The issue was always I was spending all of the tier just progressing. Whereas in the guild I'm in now, if I'd have carried, which was the intention, obviously I didn't join to just piss about for a few months and then stop. But the intention was, so we spend 2 or 3 months progressing, and then I get 2 or 3 months of just chill farm. In the final few weeks before the next tier, you can look towards the next bosses, you can have yourself focused on that, and you have this nice cycle of progress and then chill, progress and chill. But then I've just realised with all the other stuff alongside it, it's still not going to be, it's not good enough. Especially when I want to do other things as well, and especially when work's going to be harder next year because I'm teaching another course, one that I've never taught before. So I'm going to have a lot of extra prep to do for my teaching next year. So yeah, the going more casual means more work. That's how it actually works in practice. More casual is more effort and more commitment. There's more commitment required when you don't do as well. It's not so much Mythic Rain that's a problem, it's all the time spent out of it. That's, yeah, I mean, that's most of it. As I say, there's lots of things. It's not just one thing. But it is a big thing. If it weren't for that, I may not have made that decision. The other part of it, you've got to look at this way as well, is I've been doing like endgame raiding for virtually every tier. I stopped after tier 7. I quit the game completely at that point. And then I came back for Dragon Soul, whatever tier that was. I can't remember now. What tier was that? 13? I think that was tier 13. So obviously I missed out 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. But I've raided all of the others and at the highest level where there's been different levels. So I've done it a lot, and also I'm never going to raid at the level that I have in the past. It's like, you know, if you think about, well, you may not know unless you've been watching those videos recently, but the things I've done seriously before World of Warcraft came along, whether it's Warhammer, whether it was Judo or in the Scouts or something like that, I was always able to progress from where I had been. I was always able to compete at a higher level. There was that escalation there. That's not the case in World of Warcraft. I've already been, years ago, in the best guild I will ever raid in again. I will never raid in a guild that competitive again. So there's a certain element of that as well. It's almost like being in retirement anyway. Yes, more casual means more time spent on whites, but also more days spent raiding, more hours spent raiding. More time spent trying to look through logs of other guilds and your own guilds and kill videos, more preparation. You know, it sounds baffling, but if you either spend the time on preparing for raiding at the start or just before the start of it, before it comes out, or you spend it by taking months longer than everyone else. You know, everyone spends the time somewhere. You know, and the ones who decide to spend that time early and get themselves properly prepared are the ones who don't have to spend as much time on the actual raiding. Yes, but yeah, basically, ideally what I want is, and when I say a heroic guild, I don't mean a guild that will progress through heroic. I mean ones that does heroic. I mean, you know, Uldir comes out first week and all the bosses are dead at the end of that week. That's what I mean. Preferably in 1 or 2 nights. Who would I trust with my car keys, Sylvanas or Jaina? Jaina, have you seen what she can do? Even if I drive it into a lake, or she does, she can just lift it up like Yoda. You know? That was the only decent thing about that Warbringers shit that came out yesterday. The fact that she went Yoda on that ship. Definitely let Jaina have my keys. At least I'll get my car back. Might be a bit wet, but I'll get it back. Sylvanas will just crash it into a tree. Do I think I will end up finishing Heroic in 2 weeks and have months of no raiding? Well, I would still ideally like to do the Heroic run, not necessarily every week, although if I'm about every week, but you still do it, you know, you still do it every week, but just ideally quick couple of hours in, out, done, bish, bash, bosh, not having to spend a load of time. And of course, with the advantage of Heroic being that if 1 week I want to go off and do something else, it's like, well, there's no big deal, because that's the benefit of Heroic. It's flexible. The problem you've found with Heroic only guilds is they always get antsy. Try first couple of bosses. Yeah, I would not join a guild that even has... Basically, it's like anyone joining any guild. You join a guild of common purpose. So you need to join a guild of people that have the same attitude and approach to the game that you do. So, and I don't know that this would be easy to find, by the way. I may not find it at all. But what I'd need is a guild of people who is more than capable of doing Mythic raiding at cutting edge level, but for whatever reason, they're not going to. So they're going to do the Heroics and they're going to do some Mythic pluses, and that's it. Most guilds that do Heroic move to slow Mythic progress after. That's fine. I just won't join those guilds. And as I say, if I don't find a guild, then I don't find a guild. I mean, there was a time, you know, if it weren't for the personal loot changes, ironically, I might have been able to join, say, a former guild or something like that, but as a social, and that way come along to their Heroic runs so that I can feed their mains gear, because I don't mind that. I'll just take what I get from coins. And that would have worked out all right. And then you'd also have on hand Mythic quality raiders to do some Mythic plus dungeons with now and then. So that would work out okay. But of course, now with the Mythic plus rules, there isn't an incentive in them bringing socials along. I don't think anyway. To I suppose them. I don't know. There might be. I suppose. I don't know. But I don't think there's such an obvious incentive to bring socials along. LFR kill. I do hope not. At the same time, do you know what? When which expansion was this? It might have been Mists of Pandaria. I remember I joined a guild and it was on another realm. It's almost always on another realm. And I was transferring some of my alts across. And with one of them, before joining the guild, I thought, because this was at a time where there were benefits in basically there were all these cesspool guilds who just attracted lots of new players so they could make money off them. So I joined one of them just to see what it was like. And there were people there who genuinely thought that LFR... Now remember, there was no such thing as Mythic raiding then. It was like LFR normal Heroic. That's what it was. Even Flex hadn't come out till the end of MOP, so earlier in MOP this was. And they genuinely thought that there was no difference between LFR and Heroic, other than the bosses did more damage on Heroic. That was it. They didn't think there was any difference in the fights. Personal loot kills the social rank. Well, do you know what? This is one of the things I was saying, because a lot of the biggest supporters of this forced personal loot change were not all. I mean, obviously there's different people in there, but there was an awful lot who their attitude was of people who aren't given the loot. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, if you're one of those people, you're now not going to be taken along to the raid. There's a whole load of people who suddenly think they're going to be getting their own loot now and not having to fork it over. But what they won't realise is they won't even be taken to the runs in the first place. So they won't even get to be able to use their coins on stuff and take up the crumbs of stuff that other people don't need. Hi, Rydam. No, I'm not. Well, I am at the moment raiding Mythic, but I won't be come Uldir. When Mythic was introduced, was it harder than Heroic used to be? It's difficult to say because they also went from 25 man to 20 man. And the problem with that is it meant not only could you carry fewer players, because with the fights as they were, there was 10 man and 25 man. So the fights were sometimes more forgiving on 10 man. It basically, if space was at a premium, there was lots of splash damage type of mechanics going on, then it was easier on 10 man. Or if it was the opposite and you needed people not to be spread out so much or something like those sort of mechanics, soaking type mechanics, then it tended to be easier on 25 man. But by and large, they had to be challenging on both 10 and 25 man. So once they changed it so it's only going to be for 20 man, they didn't have to leave really margins for error. They could tune it much tighter. So technically, I think it did get harder. And also the fact that you couldn't take everything in your raid. As a 25 man raid, you could have whatever you wanted. But since Mythic's come out, not only have we got an extra class to throw into the mix as well, an extra couple of specs there, there's things that you just basically do without. It means your roster also had to be smaller. Not just your raid size smaller, your roster smaller. Why not just find a guild of mature, friendly people, then you can raid whenever you can raid. That's fine, yeah, Anders, that would be ideal, as long as they're not friendly, mature, but ultimately shit at the game. That wouldn't be good. But yes, potentially something like that. Basically a family guild, because that's the #1 reason for people who are capable of doing Mythic raiding but choosing not to. Mine's different. Mine's a difference. Mind you, there might be other people in my situation as well who just don't want to do it anymore. You know, they did a downgrade at one point. LFR became normal. No, LFR's always been LFR. What happened was, late MOP, they introduced flex mode. So then you had LFR flex mode, normal and heroic, which then moved into Warlords of Draenor, where they changed the names. It was still LFR, and then flex became normal. Normal became heroic, and heroic became mythic. If the personal loot does affect gearing pace, it'll affect it early on. Later on it won't so much, because you will then be able to trade amongst yourselves. Apart from obviously Titan Forge pieces, but Titan Forging is supposed to be much less common. Then those social members won't be getting those slots regardless. Well, this is exactly what my point was. There's much less sense in taking a social member. It might, I mean, I haven't really thought about it in too much detail. It might be possible that if you work out the probability of it, you might, if you've got 25 raiders, you can have 30 in a heroic group. You might still work out better taking 5 socials to get the more bits of gear, and it might sort of work out that on balance that's still going to work out at more pieces of gear for your main raiders, in which case they may still take socials, but they may not. Raid encounters become more complex over time. They have, but also add-ons have become more sophisticated over time. And although Blizzard have occasionally removed certain features, we've nonetheless, we now as standard have WeCorers telling us we don't, add-ons started off as well, you had add-ons. I remember in vanilla I had add-ons for raiding, but I didn't really have any add-ons that told me what the boss was doing. Alright, it was simpler mechanics, you could cope. And then it started increasing. Then you started to have boss timers come in for events. Then you started to have notifications come in. Now you have custom WeCorers, which not only tell you, oh, this thing is happening now, but also tells you what to do about it, because you have custom WeCorers that are being written by someone who's designing the strategy for your guild, and it will even say, do this thing. This thing is happening, do this thing. So although the mechanics have become more complex, the notifications you get, the information you get has also become more sophisticated. So to be honest with you, raiding doesn't feel harder for me than it did. I mean Molten Core, see, that's another thing when people talk about, oh, raiding was easy in vanilla. There's 2 things about that. One, when it comes down to it, all of those people, well, most of those people, when you actually questioned them. Turns out they actually didn't do anything other than Molten Core. Obviously, that was the first one. It was easy. And the other thing is that when they did that, like, Raid Finder version of Molten Core a few years ago, you had Mythic Raiders making a right arse of it. So it wasn't that straightforward. But yeah, Anchorage and Nax they had much more complex mechanics in them. Very much more so. Speaking of, I took down my Weapons Can Titanforge video. No, I wasn't mistaken. I said this at the start of the show. Blizzard threw a wobbly. Long story short, because I did explain it at the beginning. Basically, what I was going to do was a video that says, oh, they said weapons weren't going to Titanforge or go above +10. We can see that they're doing +15. I don't need any insider information to know that. I can see it. Players have found this out by playing the beta and alpha. It was the same in alpha. And, you know, I can do sims letting me know how much of an upgrade this is as well. So I could have done a video attacking the hell out of Blizzard for doing this and going on a right tirade and blah, 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 blah. But no, because someone put me right on something that, okay, Blizzard hadn't put out there themselves, I was able to say, but actually, Blizzard aren't being stupid about it. It's okay. But they didn't like that. They threw there was a massive shitstorm, basically. So I had to take it down, which was unfortunate. But this is what does my head in about... This is another good reason, actually, if I'm honest, about not doing the Mythic raiding. Because although I'll still keep doing the same content for WoW that I do now, the time saved will allow me to do content on other things, and that will be some respite, because as big a company and as Blizzard is, and as good at making games as they are, they're utterly retarded when it comes to engagement with the community. So retarded. Like, here's me doing a video, because if someone gets hold of the same information that is readily apparent and decides to do a video on it, guaranteed, 100% guaranteed, they are going to come to the conclusion that it's a very, very bad system, and they're going to completely slate Blizzard for it. So there was me putting something out that actually says, actually, you need to take this into account, and it's okay. And they did their nut, basically. So, yeah, to delete it. Azerite armor is non-tradable. Yes, the Azerite armor is non-tradable and non-warforgeable. So any Azerite armor you get is entirely yours. Can't be warforged. It's the only way it works, if we're honest. It has to be like that, I think. It's clumsy, but for Azerite armor to work, I think it has to be like that. No, I think Blizzard are right on the Azerite armor thing, that it is better off. It is better off not being tradable, all things considered. Let's have a look here. "25-man hero, it might have been slightly easier just from a melee point of view, from not needing to do certain mechanics." Well, from my... Oh, sorry, you think... Okay, old style hero. There were pains in the arse type fights, though. You know. I mean, I remember Dark Animus was a complete pain in the arse. Because I just stood in a corner for most of the fight. Didn't do anything. I just stood in a corner letting a mob hit me. Yeah, I had to delete the video. Well, it's not them being gits. It's stupider than that. It's... I'd put out a video backing up what they were doing. No one else is going to do that. You know. Indirectly, Alias, yes, they did. So yes, I got attacked for defending them, yes. So, so what I should have done, in hindsight, What I should have done was the video that I would have done in the first place, where I basically attacked them, because if I only refer to the information that is publicly available, then it comes out as a very bad system. Now, the other thing, if we analyse it a little bit, because thinking about it, and someone put a little idea in my head, think about it this way. So I've brought out a video backing up Blizzard's system. So why would they be mad at that? Think about it. Why would they be mad at that? I've got an awful feeling. Basically, I've been trying to play it down a bit, but it's quite clear Battle for Azeroth isn't actually ready for launch. Obviously, it's going to launch. The systems are already live now. The only thing that's not live is obviously the content. We can't go to the new zones. We can't level. We don't get the professions. But everything else is in the game. It's all in the game files. It's there. War mode's in there. The loot rules are in there. The new class abilities and talents are in there. All the actual BfA systems are in there. So in theory, that should mean they're finished. They're done. Finished with. It's there. The only thing they should be working on now is making sure the dungeons are got their polish on them. You know, all the assets are there, debugging, that sort of stuff. So you ask yourself, so why would they moan about the fact that I'd done that video? What if there's still things they might change about it? What if they might change what a weapon will Titan Forge to? What if that's the reason they were mad about it? Because although it's been like that for 6 months, what if they're thinking of changing it? And that's what they're mad about. So that basically means that at this point, right now, when effectively BfA is live, apart from the new content, the systems are live, they still don't know what they're doing with loots. I mean, that's a suggestion. I'm not saying that's the case. That's just an idea. Because what I found was particularly worrying is, if you think about, I'm going to have to, sorry, I'm missing loads of comments. I'll scroll back in a moment. If you think about what's new in BfA, the flagship bit of content is Island Expeditions. Like, it was Mythic Plus dungeons for Legion, and that worked out superbly. It was garrisons for WoD. That didn't work out superbly. And in BfA, it's Island Expeditions. But even as recently as about February, March it was, they were saying they're not sure what they're doing with islands. All right, of course they're giving Azeroth, or artifact power as we know it. But even, you know, when Alpha was out, it was all out and we were trying this stuff out. Even then they were saying, in fact, I think it must have been more recently than that, because Island Expeditions weren't available till about, when did they start being testable? But let's say about March. They were saying they're not sure if they'll stay relevant all the way through the expansion. To which I thought, one, it's the flagship content. How can it not be relevant throughout the expansion? And two, whether it is or it isn't, how can you not be sure what you're doing with it? You know, so there. Sorry, I'm going to go back and read some comments now. But they're not ready. And I've not wanted to get onto the sky is falling boat myself, so I've not really talked about this in videos. But they're not ready. It's baffling to me that decisions that should have been made before BlizzCon might still be being made. I'm going to probably scroll up too far there. You don't think I will get bored not Mythic raiding? No, I've got loads of things to do. The one thing that will not happen is I will not get bored. I have so many interests that I already cannot even do. If I had if I won the lottery and had all the free time in the world like I effectively do now, except I can't use it because it's too bloody hot and I just melt in the heat. Although there's supposed to be an apocalyptic thunderstorm on Friday, and then for about 5 days it's supposed to be much more sensible temperatures. So I've got 5 days of, you know, getting something done. But if I had all that free time, I would do loads more stuff, and I would still not have enough time to do everything I would like to do. So there's no chance of me getting bored. There is a chance of me missing it, and there is a chance of me missing the competitive element of it, unless I get into doing something else competitively, like, say, Warhammer. The more raid tools you have, the more complicated Blizz have to make the encounters. Well, yeah, that's even though I don't like this metaphor, I will use it just this once. That's a case of which came first, the chicken and the egg, isn't it? It's a bit like, even though the egg came first, just the answer to that one. Did the encounters become more complex because add-ons became more sophisticated, or was it the other way around? I don't know. But they've gone hand in hand at any rate. Your big issue with the Azeroth armor is Blizzard not wanting us to be able to change traits at your leisure. Yes, that is an issue, but you know. Weren't I just using facts in the video? I was using facts, Brandon, but one of the facts I used, the one that actually came to their rescue, was something that is not something that you would have found out by data mining or playing the beta. It's something that came from Blizzard, that Blizzard hadn't said publicly. So they are quite spectacular in some regards. The Blizzard employees, they're just insane. Their whole engagement attitude is completely insane. If BfA only systems are unstable, then launch will be... No, launch won't be a disaster. I will back Blizzard up on this. They said it at the Q&A themselves, and they're dead right about it. The launch will not be a disaster for two reasons. One, they will actually stress test the launch stuff, because there will be a beta... There always is a beta test where they're still giving out beta keys now. So they'll get loads of people in. They'll encourage you to all log on at a certain time, and they'll do that test. The other thing is, like Ian Hazakostas himself said on Thursday, BfA is basically that it's live now. Okay, we don't have the content, but all the systems are live. So they're already doing the testing and refining. As soon as the expansion launches, nothing new happens. They just unlock access to the new content. But it's all there. It's in your game files now. BfA is there. It's live, effectively. You know, we'd still call what we're in now technically Legion because we're doing Legion content. But really, the game is BfA, you know. So the launch will not be a disaster. The launch will be fine. WoD was a disaster not because the systems were crap, but because their servers couldn't handle the load, and then they updated them. So that will be all fine. Allied races are best-selling points. And already alpha mode people. Well, that's the funny thing, isn't it? Because allied races are a BfA feature. I mean, you could, yeah, okay, you could argue that's the flagship feature. But because we got access to them way before BfA, it's difficult to think of it as BfA flagship content. So I'm still saying islands on that one. Yes, I'm stepping down from Mythic raiding. What other interests do I have? So Warhammer, Lord of the Rings, both playing it as well as reading, science in general, fantasy and sci-fi in general as well. I like reading. I even like writing. I started writing a book a few years ago now, and then World of Warcraft basically decimated my, at the time, varied interests. Don't even have copies of it anymore. I might at some point decide to try writing again. See if I can remember enough of it and try writing it out again. Was this the issue I referred to some weeks ago but wouldn't say what it was? Artanol. I don't know. There's so many issues that I know about. See, some of them, you see, I know not to talk about. You know, I'm not... See, part of me, because I'm not a person that likes keeping secrets, because I think people, like... behave in the way that they would like people to behave to them. So if you have someone who always seems very you know, secretive, it tends to be because, you know, I don't like secrets. I don't like endeavour ever to keep secrets. I like to be honest. So it's sometimes difficult, unless someone tells me to be discreet, it is sometimes difficult for me to judge when discretion is necessary. People literally have to say to me, don't tell this to anyone. And if they do that, I won't, so it's fine. But there are some things, even with that I know. Obviously, I know not to say anything that is attacking Blizzard. You know, using any information I might have that isn't widely known to attack them, that would be stupid. You know, because obviously they're not going to like that. But this, I thought this would be delightful, because here I am actually making their what appears to be a really stupid decision sound all right. But no. Not entirely true, because although the content is on our drive, the problem is on the servers. It'll be fine. Just Legion was fine. There is no reason with Legion being so smooth that BfA won't be the same. Do I have any favourite scientists or science communicators? I would say in terms of science communicators, Michio Kaku, because he's big on futurology, and I absolutely love listening to and reading about things that are in development right now that might be commonplace technology in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, whatever. I do like sort of knowing where technology is going. So I would say if I listen to anyone on a regular basis, it's him. I don't really listen to science commentators to find out about science, because I just read it myself. I have subscriptions to Nature and New Scientist, for example, which are general science journals. So I get to any sort of new scientific discoveries or developments, I tend to be able to read about anyway. In terms of famous scientists, I don't know, because sometimes it's a bit strange. Like, there's good and bad things about a lot of very famous scientists. Like Sir Fred Hoyle, for example. He had a brilliant... I always use him as an example. When people... Because I'm religious, for example. Now, a lot of people think that religion and science don't go hand in hand. They think, well, how can you be either? Because they think there's... Whereas I always use someone like Sir Fred Hoyle. I don't actually think he was even religious. But what he did, the only way he could do that was in the same sort of thinking you have to be able to think to be religious. But at the same time, he also went a bit mad at the end and was an arsehole to everyone. So there was bad aspects to him as well. It's the same as Einstein. Einstein pushed forward a lot of science, but he also held a lot of science back because of his prejudices. And, you know, so as a scientist, he was very unscientific. He just happened to come up with some brilliant discoveries. But he also held back other people's brilliant discoveries because he wouldn't have it. As a person as well, he was a disgraceful human being with his relationships with women, but he was extremely wise on the human condition. You know, I quote him no end of times in terms of the stupidity of the world. So, you know, it's all... There's no one I would say was just a brilliant person in all respects. Did Doc Emmett Brown know what he was talking about? I imagine so. I haven't seen Back to the Future since I was quite young myself, though. I am a teacher, yes. I teach science. Hold on, what am I missing? Yes, Worm, basically. It turns out, I didn't know this. I didn't know it was anything to keep... See, I didn't know it was anything they wanted to keep secret. Obviously, I wouldn't have said anything otherwise. You know. But, you know, there you go. I'm not mad, I'm eccentric. Maybe. Possibly. But no, Fred Hoyle went proper mad. Like, for example, he tried to say that illnesses were caused by viruses invading us from space. This is why he did something that was, I thought, disgraceful but also understandable. His work, which I won't go into now, was quite brilliant, and it won the Nobel Prize. But he didn't win the Nobel Prize. The Nobel Prize was actually given to 3 other fellas who... It was his work, but other people got the Nobel Prize for his work. And the reason was because he was such a massive dick and was also a bit doolally at the time. They didn't dare let him on stage at the Nobel Prize Awards. Tesla just ripped off from everyone. What, Nikolai Tesla? You're having a laugh, surely. No, he was brilliant, but he was a bit, you know, strange as well. I have actually for a long time wanted to do a science YouTube channel. It's like anything else though, I'd need to know what for. I don't imagine, it's not something that I would think imminent because I don't know what sort of focus to give it or anything like that. So I'd much rather just work on other things for now, but at some point in the future I would like to. But the problem is I don't, and if I did it I'd want to do a really good job of it from the start. And that means not only knowing exactly what focus I want to give it, but also knowing, you know, that I could have the time to do it regularly. WoW physics doesn't really exist. I tried it with that Argus thing, and then instantly it all went to crap as more information came out. None of it is, it doesn't really work at all. You know, the science of WoW is sort of pretty much non-existent. They make no effort at all. Tesla, well, he didn't even have the common sense to write down his stuff. So there's plenty of ideas locked away in that decayed brain of his, which, you know, are lost completely. There's also some scientists that became famous for outrageous reasons. Like the most famous one was Millikan. He's the one who basically discovered the charge on an electron and indeed charges on individual quarks. But the problem was that his results were wrong, so he fiddled them. He fiddled his results, which didn't come to light until years later when someone was reading through his notes, because it was very bad handwriting. It wasn't an easy thing to do. But he was still right. So it's like he was right, but he made up the results. It's a bit like when someone went off to prove Einstein's theory of relativity. They technically did, but they made a mistake in the calculation. But they made two mistakes and they cancelled each other out. So the end result came out at the right thing. Do a WoW speculation science video. Like talk about how paladins use a fourth dimension force vector as their power source. No, that would be silly. Oh, you meant most of his adventures were stolen by others. Well, I mean, that was not uncommon at the time as well. I mean, one of the most famous stories from British invention was the guy who invented the hovercraft, who didn't get a penny out of it. Not a penny, because it wasn't patented. Because in this country, we don't really... I think we're supposed to be a bit better at it now, but certainly at the time, there wasn't really government help for inventors. So basically everyone just could rip off his design because it wasn't protected. Oh, you mean the Tesla company just following the footsteps of the crackpot? Yes. Okay, you mean Elon Musk. Accidental innovation is the best innovation. What, like penicillin? Because you're a scruffy bastard who doesn't wash out your test tubes and Petri dishes. What about the Turing Shroud? That's just likely to have been... well, it depends whether... I mean, obviously no one seriously believes that it's an actual ancient relic. Well, it's ancient because it's old. But it's very likely to have just been mocked up. What do I think the stories released today? The Jaina video. The Jaina video was appalling. Absolutely appalling. There were 4 things in the Jaina Warbringers video. 1. Jaina's people blame her for the death of her father. Not exactly a newsflash. We got that from the comic. Okay. Well, if you played the beta, you got that elsewhere as well, but that technically hasn't happened yet. But we got that from the comic. 2, Jaina agrees that her people are right to blame her. She blames herself. That's not exactly a newsflash either. 3, Jaina is pissed off at the Horde. Well, that's been common knowledge for years now. And 4, she's going to take direct action against the Horde. Again, we learnt nothing. Nothing at all. All we learnt is that, like Yoda, she can bring up a ship from the depths of a load of water. Now, I'm not saying the cinematic value of the video was bad. It was fine. It was enjoyable to watch, but it provided no information. It added nothing. Like I haven't watched them, but I've been seeing videos pop up. I've seen people do videos like 7 minutes, 8 minutes. I saw Bay had done a video that lasts over half an hour on it. How do you talk for half an hour on a 5-minute clip that brings you no information first? It gives us nothing. Did Han shoot first? I don't know whether he shot first, but unless he's an idiot, he should have shot first. You know, if you're facing off against someone who's got a gun at you and they've announced that they want to kill you, I would shoot first. I'm pretty sure I've said this before. Is there a reason each character is locked to 2 main professions? It's just the way it works. I think MMOs... I'm not an expert because Warcraft was my first MMO. But I think just the way MMOs worked at the time, you chose from them. Whereas there are more modern systems of dealing with professions in more recent games these days. And WoW just hasn't really moved on from that. So I think it's a historical reason. Bay's a cinema grad. Oh, is he? I didn't know that. He talks a lot about the techniques used, not necessarily the lore. I see. Even so, half an hour is a bit much, isn't it? Gordon Bennett. He broke it down as a filmmaker, did it? Okay. I'll cut him some slack then. But I still don't get the people who've done, even though I haven't watched them, you know, maybe, you know, there's some reason for it. But how do you do a video lasting 7 or 8 minutes on a 5-minute clip that tells you nothing? Not a thing. Zero. Do British people even know how to use guns? Very few. Some do. But very few don't like guns. We don't... Well, it's more specifically that we don't like other people having guns. We feel much safer when other people aren't walking around with guns. Where did that come from anyway? The video did show us something. She's now determined to take an active course to fight the Horde. We knew that from the comic, though. If we didn't know it before, anyway. That was in the comic. Anyway. Limited because professions used to give buffs. Well, they didn't at the start, though. The professions giving buffs was something that happened not at the start. It's sort of for a bit and then not again. Right at the start, they didn't. Has Bell released his video yet? Oh, Balula, I don't know. I don't follow him any. Ever since he started ripping off other people's work, I stopped following him, I'm afraid. I don't follow people who plagiarise. About shooting Greedo first. I'd have shot Greedo first. You know. I mean, he's a bounty hunter for goodness sake. He's not supposed to be a nice guy. Hi, Razorblade. I am sort of well, apart from really hot. How excited am I for War Mode in BfA? I'm super excited. I love War Mode. It's absolutely fantastic. Fantastic. Love it. It's great. It keeps all of those people who want to interrupt my questing away from me. It's like they don't even exist anymore. It's the best thing Blizzard have added to the game since Mythic Plus Dungeons. And actually, better than that. Better than that. I haven't actually cosplayed as Han Solo. No. I haven't cosplayed as... Have I? Oh no, I have as Darth Vader. That was when I was a kid, though. You were pissed off when they made Greedo a hero on Battlefront. Well, he's just a bounty hunter. He's no different to Han Solo, really, is he? There's nothing inherently... He's just an... He's not supposed to be bad or good. He's just morally grey. You know, he just goes off and he's a bounty hunter. Yes, it's fantastic because you can turn it off. Well, no, you don't even have to turn it off. It's just off by default. It's great. I just don't turn it on. Oh, the Dark Iron Tunneler vid. Yes. Have I decided to make one? What, a Dark Iron Dwarf? Well, that all depends on whether I'll end up playing as Alliance or Horde. So, yes. You keep seeing the big sun on the horizon, then see a world tree similar size and stature, and can't help but think they're linked. Oh, I don't know. Well, we'll start to find out, because in America the first part of the scenario's already happened. Because obviously one thing you can't see in the beta is all these cinematics, which obviously tie together the stories. So they always bring you fresh insights. It's a bit like in with Argus. When Argus was on the PTR and I was testing all that stuff, there was a bit in the quest where you rescue Zera and then the screen goes black, and then all of a sudden Illidan's on the floor on all fours and Turalian's over him looking like he wants to chop his head off. And I was there going, what's just happened there? Until you see the cinematic, you've no idea what's going on. So I'm looking forward to seeing the cinematics explaining a few things. What am I looking for in a guild again? Basically people who are good at the game and will not mess about, but want to do heroic raiding only and Mythic Plus Dungeons. On a casual-ish basis as well. I don't want to be tied down. What happened with the new guild? The new guild's fine. You know, there's nothing wrong with the new guild. I've just decided it's not worth doing mythic raiding in BfA anymore. I've just had enough. How would I search for a guild like that? I'll probably check. I'll just start. I'm not going to check for anything immediately because I'm not ready to leave yet. But I'll just check forums to begin with. Put some feelers out nearer the time. Do I still see my self-raiding every week? Not necessarily, no. Like most weeks, I would say, as long as it's quick. But I'd also like the freedom to be able to say, actually, you know, if the normal day for doing the raid is, say, Saturday, that one Saturday, actually, I'm going to go out, and I'll do that. Divine Purpose is our strongest talent. It is true at the moment. Obviously, you have to sim yourself, because that's based on a standard set of gear. Your gear isn't standard set of gear. Might be different for you. But at the moment, yeah. I mean, we can use Inquisition and Divine Purpose because we've got Soul of the High Lord. But if you didn't, well, if you didn't, you'd just buy it. But if you didn't, and you couldn't buy it for some reason, because even though you can, Divine Purpose is doing a bit more than Inquisition. But that's at the moment. That's not necessarily going to be the same at level 120. And also, just because it does theoretically more damage, doesn't make it the best talent either, because it's unreliable. You're in a heroic guild and it's fun. As long as it's a heroic guild where, for me, see, I wouldn't... See, I get annoyed with mythic quality raiders if they keep making mistakes regularly. I don't mind, everyone makes mistakes, but regularly on mythic mechanics. I'm certainly not going to enjoy people making mistakes over and over again on heroic mechanics. If I clear it in 2 weeks, even if a bad heroic guild... No, a bad heroic guild takes months. 2 2 weeks is not good. I want to clear it in 1 session. No 2 weeks about it. I don't mind in the first week if it takes a couple of days. After that, I want to be doing it in 1 session. Just to do it. You know. Just to do some raiding. Because just because I'm stopping Mythic raiding doesn't mean to say I don't enjoy raiding. You know. So I'd still like to raid. But I also don't want to have an artificially difficult experience. Heroic is not difficult for me, so I don't want to raid with people for whom it is difficult either. You know, it's like I keep saying, a guild is common purpose. I want to raid with people who are like me, or in terms of their attitude to the game. No one's really like me. I'm unique, obviously, just like everyone else. There's lots of chill guilds now, a lot of good players. Yes, I mean, that's it. So it's a case of just trying to find one that fits me. Maybe it'll be easy, maybe it won't. Do I think there's like... I don't know whether there'd be life on some of those. I would be quite excited if they were to send probes to actually have a look in the liquid surfaces, though. On Europa, or even... Europa would be the obvious one to start. The problem at the moment when it comes to sending things out to the solar system probes is power in it. Because there's 2 main groups that send missions off. There's obviously NASA in the US and there's the ESA in Europe. NASA uses nuclear propulsion systems, but they're running out of the nuclear material needed to fuel them. So we need a next generation propulsion system, which doesn't seem to be coming online yet. The ESA is dead against using nuclear propulsion systems. So they tend to use things like solar power, which is why the... Shit, I've forgotten the name of it now. Rosetta mission had huge solar panels, absolutely enormous, because it had to work from very far out. Well, that's not going to work all the way out at Europa. So it's not an easy thing to create a mission for it. So I'm looking for a good guild to clear Heroic in a week, but doesn't want to do Mythic. Yes, and preferably Alliance, but it doesn't have to be Alliance. I also have to find a guild group with no gnomes. Not necessarily. I'll just bully the gnomes away. That's fine. That's okay. What I always do. Don't understand people that say it takes longer to do than raiding over the course of a week. Hang on. What don't you understand? Sorry. I do not understand people like you who say that it takes longer to do than raiding over the course of a week. What takes longer to do than raiding? Sorry. Hang on. Have I missed something? Oh, hi, Diabuggins. No problem. Thank you very much. Tesla batteries. So they can catch... I don't think things really catch fire in space. They're not supposed to. Unless you're wasting your oxygen supply on them. You heard Gnome Warlock's got smaller demons now. I've not seen that. But then again, I haven't made a Gnome Warlock, so I can't attest to that. Oh, I've lost my thing. There it is. I think people are still asking if Blizzard are planning on like nerfing. I'm actually wondering why Blizzard haven't nerfed Antorus, because it came as a surprise, I think, to everyone that it was so tough last week. I had a thought that maybe they've made it deliberately like that to make us feel weak because we've lost our artifact power. Or our artifact weapons, I should say. That's the same thing. Plenty of Mythic guilds run heroics for socials and alts. Well, that's what I was saying before, indeed, Tralfa, but there's less symbiotic benefit now for them to do that with the new loot rules. Hello, Eris. Am I still going to make ret guards? Yes, I am. Yes. Actually, do you know what? This is terrible at the moment. This is only at the moment. This might change for BfA, but it also may not. I am going to do ret guides, and they will always still be useful for all sorts of rets, because you know, because that's the nature of it. But do you know how bad? And this isn't just for rets at the moment, by the way. This is at least, I can't speak for all classes, but at least ret paladins, enhancement shamans, both arms and fury warriors, and havoc demon hunters, I gather, as well. Would anyone like to hazard a guess? If you run a sim of the DPS that these should be able to do, using the optimized APL, in other words, you play perfectly, compared to just mashing random buttons like a complete beginner would do. Guess at what the percentage increase is from playing it well as compared to not really knowing what you're doing. I'll just let that sink in for 20 seconds. Since the BfA launch is on the night of Monday the 13th, what are the weekly things that we should aim for before the first reset? Clearing your bags. Clear the bags and everything else is fine. Christoph thinks 5%. Super Dave thinks 1%. Super Dave is correct. The difference, in fact, for some it's less than 1%. For rets, it's less than 1%. For Havoc Demon Hunters, according to Kib, who does Havoc Demon Hunter stuff, it's 1%. Basically, the difference between playing properly, you know, in other words, people like me spend a long time making guides. You know, well, specifically people like Sol Sacra, Max, you know, Skeletor, Thordros, do a lot of theory crafting to work out, and Sol Sacra does the bulk of it in terms of working out the best APL. They spend ages working out the best system. Then people like me spend ages coming up with guides to try and make that information accessible to as many people as possible, including people who just play casually right up to end game raiders. And the bottom line is, if you were to just press whichever buttons look shiniest to you, there's not really a lot of difference in it. That's desperate. Now, some of it may change. For example, there are certain talents that are more difficult to, because I was saying, for example, like for rets, there's the first talent row on the left hand side and the middle, the two ones are fairly passive abilities. The first two are passive. The third one's an active talent, but at the moment it's not tuned to do enough damage, so it's not worth taking. Now, you could argue that once it's tuned better and we want to take it, that because it's an active ability, then it'll be more difficult to use. But unfortunately, it isn't, because all you do is use it on cooldown. Because you can look at it and think to yourself, oh, there's probably an optimal time to use it. No, you just use it on cooldown. That's and it's because I know, or you know, the theory crafters of those specs are saying that for ret paladins, as I say, both warrior specs. I'm not sure about DKs. I can't speak for them. Havoc Demon Hunters and Enhancement Shamans, because that's the situation for at least those 5 specs. It might also be the situation for lots more as well. And if it's going to be the situation for that many, it sort of suggests it's deliberate. It might suggest that Blizzard deliberately don't want any spec to be, you know, the old phrase that used to be said, easy to pick up but difficult to master. In other words, anyone can come along and play whichever spec they like to play and they'll do all right, but in the hands of someone who truly understands it, they'll do better. Not twice as well or anything, but enough to distinguish themselves in a group. Maybe Blizzard don't want that, you know. Maybe Blizzard don't want it. So maybe people won't even need guides. I will still do them, of course. Actually, in my long-winded way answering the question, yes, I will still do them, but they might be largely worthless, at least in terms of rotation. Obviously, there's more to play in a class and spec than just doing the damage. Rets are just smashing their head on the keyboard. The thing is, though, although it's not necessarily untrue, the same is exactly the case with all the others. People always say that about Ret. But the thing is, if there was ever a spec where it makes no difference what you do, you would never see variation in the logs, but you do. And you always see the same people passing the best as well. So, you know, and it's not people who just get the best gear either. So people always say that, that's like the Ret meme. But it's potentially a little bit more true than it ever has been in the past. But it's also true of lots of others as well, as I say. So, yes, at the moment, and I do stress, we are still in early tuning and things can change. But at the moment, people that are simming, those ones I've talked about, are finding that it makes no difference, or not, it doesn't make much difference between playing well and mouth breathing, is the term I believe that was used. Do you flat palm mash or fist mash? Oh, no. Maybe you could just be like Homer with the drinking bird and just get something like that, and then you can just sit back and watch Netflix or something. But yeah, it's desperate, isn't it? Because I would expect, to me, 5% seems acceptable. I would be okay with 5%. 10% would be better. Difference between random buttons and doing it properly. 10% I think would be better. 5% I think would be acceptable because you can distinguish yourself with 5%. But 1% or less than 1%. Jesus. Jengs Krebens, help my Bob. Don't know what that's about. Face mash though. Yeah, but that must get very painful on your hooter. I suppose it depends how big your nose is. If you've got a little cute button nose, you might get away with it. Ah, well, when I say button mashing and overcapping holy power, actually, no, it does include a fair amount of overcapping holy power. I didn't actually see them all myself because I didn't run these sims, you've got to understand. So I don't know exactly what the conditions were. But when I asked, they basically just said, just pressing whatever. So it might well include, yeah, massively overcapping. And it might also, yes, indeed, mean not reacting to procs. Yeah. 2005 BlizzCon a few days ago, the Paladin. Yeah, but 2005 BlizzCon was when, in fact, it wasn't a button mashing class. We didn't have any buttons to mash. Rets back then were you put your seal on. In theory, if you wanted a rotation, you could seal, judge, reseal. No, you would Crusader seal, judge, seal command, consecration, judge, seal, and carry on like that. But you couldn't do that because you run out of mana. So the reality was you used to judge Crusader, seal command, auto hit. So, but that was back in 2005. If he thinks warriors were much more complicated, then, you know, he is not remembering very much from then. But Asmongold has a huge inferiority complex when it comes to paladins. You know, he's threatened by them for some reason. I don't know why. Am I still playing Lotro? Yes, I am a bit. I'm only playing like once a week, just enough to be able to do the videos. But it's something, they're feeding into each other. No buggers watching the videos, but it's something I still enjoy doing. Because I do like, you know, it's my inlet. Because obviously I can keep rereading the Lord of the Rings books. The problem with those is that the author's dead, so it's not like you get more of them, really. Occasionally they bring out another collection of stuff that they've somehow cobbled together. But basically the lore's never going to increase. So playing the game's really nice. But I keep going for long periods without playing it because, you know, as an MMO, there are drawbacks to it. So doing the videos just helps me at least play one session a week. Help. What have I done? Oh, there it is. Did I miss anything else? Oh, going back to DATS, yeah, and whatever that is, sorry. Listed all the melee. I didn't list all the melee. I didn't list Feral Druids. I don't know what's going on with them. I didn't list Windwalker Monks. I don't know what their thing. And I don't know about DKs. I only listed 4 classes. I also don't know about Survival Hunters. But then again, Survival Hunter got nowhere. Would anyone trust Christie Golden to write in the Lord of the Rings universe? I think that's supposed to be sacrosanct. I don't... Obviously, people will have to write things for games in Lord of the Rings universe, sort of. But you're not allowed to change what's in there. It's not allowed. You don't get to write the book of the 20th century and then have hacks change your stuff. Oh yeah, rogues as well. I don't know. Don't know with rogues, I'm afraid, either. Oh no. Oh, hold on. Or did someone mention something about rogues? I can't remember. But I don't know. I couldn't say. Only the 4 classes, but 5 specs that I mentioned, do I know that there is that small difference between them. And it might be that those are the only 5 at the moment, and it might be that that isn't the case when BfA goes live and they've got the tuning a bit more advanced. But equally it could be. I have given Final Fantasy XIV a go. I didn't like it, I have to say. Although, that being said, I do like the art style in it. I was watching a video yesterday from someone who was... Because apparently they've had a couple of developers sacked recently. And I was watching this video about it, and one of them absolutely deserved to get sacked. She was so sexist. I mean, I can understand that maybe she's encountered sexism in her life, and that's why she responded how she did, but it's still bang out of order. But anyway, yeah, so I was watching this thing, and he obviously had his playing of Final Fantasy in the background. And I kept looking at it going, do you know what, it looks really nice. But I've played it before, and I didn't like the actual feel of the game. So, what am I going to do with extra game time? I'm going to spend more time on the YouTube content. I'm going to spend more time doing Warhammer stuff. And then from there, we'll see. I'm going to have to spend more time doing work stuff, because I've got a bigger workload on from work for next year. Board of the Rings, the little book. Is that the one where the Rohirrim are all like fat Valkyries riding pigs? I've got that book, if that's what you mean. There's the best line I've ever read. Well, no, the second best line I've ever read in a book, actually, in Board of the Rings. It features Aragorn. Well, or the Aragorn... I can't remember. It's years since I've read it. I do have it somewhere. And there's the Faramir character, who's a bit of a love rival in this parody book. And Aragorn goes off to cure him, and he kills him, and he comes back and says, oh, he had a headache. I tried to cure it by amputation. It didn't work. But yeah, no, I've got that book somewhere. If no one watches it, it can make another channel for it. I could, but I don't. I'm not going to bother. There's a problem with having too many channels, because I technically already have 3 channels, and there's a really weird situation. One of the channels, when I switch to it, I can't switch back to this one. I have to go through the second one first. I have to switch to the second channel, so I have a 3rd channel. If I can't switch from the 3rd channel to the the main channel, which is hugely distressing. I have to switch to the second channel first, which I don't even use for anything, and then switch to the first one. It's crazy. It doesn't work. There's lots of things on YouTube that are surprisingly unfunctional, if I can say that word. It doesn't sound right when I say it, but I can't think of a better way to say it. It's really weird. Tinfoil theory. BfA will be WoD 2.0. You think because Blizz doesn't want to put a lot of effort into the expansion, then have it compete with Classic. Do you know what some people were discussing? Okay. Do you know what some people were thinking about? How about this for an idea? So what I was just saying about certain specs not being any more difficult to play with, effectively what we're talking about is very passive abilities as compared to your active talents and stuff like that, and just by ramming buttons instead of doing a properly considered priority system. Do you know what one person suggested? And I don't think they were quite joking about it either. What if, because if it's happening with multiple specs, it's not an accident, it's deliberate. And if it's deliberate, then you think to yourself, again, some people accuse me of over-analysing things, but I like to analyse things. What's the reason for that? And someone came up with something. What if we sort of know, if we're going to be honest, we know that the next big Warcraft title surely is not just going to be for PC. The PC market is too small. So that means either mobile or console. Either way, wouldn't it be an advantage to make, you know, a game that obviously is easy enough to be able to play on those formats? What if World of Warcraft is being slowly nudged towards being suitable to put on a console? You know, what if in a couple of years' time they say, oh, the next expansion is going to be out on PC and also Xbox and PlayStation? They would make so much money. Of course, that's the thing. The console market is way bigger. There are way more people that will spend 300 quid on a console than, I mean, what does it cost for even a basic gaming computer now? Must be at least 600 quid. I mean, mine way more, but you know, for anything that's decent for a game, for gaming. Plus then, of course, you've got to get the monitor, keyboard and mouse and all the rest with it as well. All right, I'll allow that one, but try and avoid that language because it does try and auto-mod it. They still haven't solved the healing issue for console. No, this is true. Which is why I'd be much more thinking of another title, another Warcraft title, rather than the current one. But what if they're trying ideas out in World of Warcraft for the next war? They must be thinking of the next Warcraft title. I refuse to believe that they are not already planning the next major Warcraft title. I refuse to believe it. They can't just wait for WoW to naturally decline and then start thinking about what to do. Surely they've got to be thinking about it good and early, and may even be actively doing something about it. And of course, if I was like, from the business end of things, if I were looking at it thinking, yeah, sure, we're making a lot of money as PC games go, but look at all this money that we're squandering that we could be making by producing a title for consoles. There's no way they could put Classic WoW on console, because then it wouldn't be Classic WoW, would it? Classic WoW has to be Classic WoW. No, I don't think they'd try and put WoW Classic into console, because although, yeah, I know what you mean, it's like a simpler game, but at the same time, the whole point of Classic is supposed to be, it's not supposed to appeal, like, if they were to produce a title for console, the whole point of that would be to appeal to a whole new audience. Classic is not about appealing to a new audience. It's about appealing to an old audience. Oh, excuse me, voice is going. So, Classic is the very opposite intention of producing something for a console. So no, I don't think so. I find, yeah, you find the PC more versatile than the console. I do. I hate the concept of consoles. PC way better. I do, you know, where I have criticisms of Elder Scrolls Online, they almost all of them come down to because of the features that make it console friendly. You know, those are, I love Elder Scrolls Online, but all the things I don't love about it are all the things that are there because it's for console. Certain games are made for one type of console is true, but I don't think Blizzard would do that. I think they would make it available for both. They only have till Azeroth Titan is ready, then they need a new planet. Well, Eternal, that was exactly what I was saying ages ago, wasn't it? That that would be a nice end to the World of Warcraft storyline. You know, Legion, because this is why I think about what, because Blizzard to me seem to be accelerating through the story now. We've finished off the Legion. I think BfA is about finishing off the old gods. Then what? Then what? What did I think about Ian's comment in the Q&A on the amount of levels? What, the fact that he said the level squish would be technically difficult? I think he'd be right, it would be technically difficult. And I agree that it would pose more technical issues than a stat and item level squish. But I still think they should have done it. And I also think what I'd like to, do you know what I'd love to do? I'd love to actually properly interview him, like in a proper interview where I ask him follow-up questions if he doesn't explain it to my satisfaction. And one of the questions that would be on that interview would be, even though it's not his, you know, decision, he was working for Blizzard when they made this decision. So we had 60 levels in vanilla. Okay, that was too much, but whatever, that was ages ago. Then you had an extra 10 levels for TBC, an extra 10 levels for Wrath. Then it went down to 5 levels for Kata and Mop. Why did they then bung it back up to 10 for WoD? Presumably the reason they did 5 for Kata and 5 for Mop is because they realised, bloody hell, the levels are going up too high. So why did they change their mind? Did they just think, screw it, it's already so high, who gives a shit? I don't know. I'd love to know. The console port add-on for WoW is a good testing ground. People are already trying to play. Well, there are people who play with a controller. There is someone who famously plays very well. He plays a Ret Paladin on a controller because he has joint problems. So yes, there are already people who play, and at least one person who plays it at a high level with a controller, indeed. Your 4-year-old can do stuff with it. Yeah, it's amazing what 4-year-olds can do, isn't it? I mean, I played with my first computer at 4 years old, and I was better than my dad from the start. I mean, it was new technology to both of us, to be fair, but still. You don't get why they don't cap levels at 60 and just go by item level. Neither do I, if the truth be told. Neither do I. Or they can have a dual leveling system. You know, like in Warhammer Online, you used to have your basic leveling system, then you had renown levels. Elder Scrolls Online, you have your champion levels. You know, there are games that have a hard level cap, and then you have a different leveling system after that, which is account wide on ESO, which makes it fantastic. You want VR system for WoW? I'm not sure I'm keen on VR at the moment. I think it will get to a point where it will be good, and I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced by it at the moment, though. They said stop giving any more talents apart from expansion-only talents, so no need to do. Well, they did say that, yeah, because of ability bloat, indeed. Evening, Kevin. They could do the same things for levels that they do for professions in BfA. 10 WOD levels, 10 Legion levels, 5 more. I suppose they could. It would be a bit confusing though, because there is one, like, it's still a role-playing game. In a role-playing game you're used to your character having levels though. So that could be a bit confusing, I think. Oh, people have actually tried to play WoW with VR. Oh dear. Really? I don't think I would fancy that. Would not fancy that at all. Ah, we've gone. Oh, there it is. But let's have a look. What have I missed? The profession squish is already causing. Hold up. So I've missed. Where have I lost that comment gone? Already causing the exact same issues Ian alluded to. I don't doubt his reason. I absolutely agree with his reasoning. I don't doubt that it's more technically challenging and would create more problems. I just think they should have done it. They said it looked great, but combat was a pain. Well, there is a heavy combat element to World of Warcraft. So, you know. I mean, that's a bit like, say, getting a meal at a restaurant and saying, yeah, it tasted really nice, but then it poisoned me and I died. A bit like, I'd really rather not have had the meal in the first place. What you need are games that are designed for the VR. Which, alright, technically there are some, but they're all shit. It's like swimming with sharks, stroking ponies bollocks. What you need is like games that are properly designed for, which will happen. You know, it will carry on. Eventually someone will do it. Paragon levels would work, yeah, I mean that would be a way to do it. You would need to see your body to get immersion, just like we can see our legs. Yes, this is true. Yes. You'd also need to feel things. Now, there is technology for this, so you'd be talking full, not full bodysuits like wetsuits or anything, but it needs to cover all parts of your body and things that will generate sensations like taps on the shoulder, things like that. So you basically, well, if you want to go proper full immersion, proper matrix mode, then yes, you don't just need visual stimuli. You need to be able to feel things, smell things, hear, and all the rest of it. We don't need electric shocks as such. Who's going to invent a game where the purpose is to withstand cardioelectric convulsions therapy? How would it feel to punt a gnome? Well, again, you'd need special shoes that gave you a bit of recoil on your foot to feel like you're actually kicking something, wouldn't you? Technology's a long way off yet. Eventually someone will probably just realise it'll be much easier just to implant something in your spine to give the illusion of all these sensations. But there might be ethical arguments with that. Gnomes don't feel pain. No, they certainly don't seem to, no. As they're not real. After BfA, I'm still very curious what they're going to do after BfA. It's quite bizarre. Although I'm not particularly excited about BfA itself. I mean, I'm still going to play it, obviously. But I think I'm more anticipating what comes after BfA than I've ever anticipated an expansion after next ever before, because I'm so convinced that they're trying to hasten the story to a conclusion. I want to know where they're going after that. No, the G word isn't banned. Someone did actually show me how to do it on YouTube, but then I couldn't be asked. So there we go. And also, if we were technically going by people getting the location of the mailbox right in terms of unbanning it, which was a thing I started to do towards the end on Twitch, in that particular case, then there were enough people got the last mailbox as well anyway. Do I think more players will be leaving than joining? I don't think so. No, I don't think there's anything that's going to cause people to mass leave BfA. In fact, for a casual player's point of view, there are things to look forward to in it. You know, it's I don't. It's just there's nothing that excites me. That's all. It's just a personal thing. It's not that I actively think there's anything bad that I could write an essay explaining why it's bad. I just don't feel excited by it. If they're going to bring WoW consoles someday, it wouldn't necessarily be a World of Warcraft. It might not be an MMO. It might be it might be like a first-person, like single-player game. Maybe. Probably wouldn't be. But very few single player games are considered, even though all the single player games that come out seem to do well, the industry seems to have an issue with them. But, you're imagining light void Star Wars knockoff story incoming. Oh, every major storyline is a knockoff from something else. Don't worry about that. That's just how it works. They're going to bring WoW to console though. Why not get a standard healing add-on, mouse over Wraithframe with heal? But I think if they bring it to console, surely you need to bring some form of active combat system into it. Because you don't really want to be targeting, do you? You got to fire and forget. The sole reason why you're hyped for BfA is the amazing character development, and especially with the new Jaina. Really? I mean, the storyline should be interesting at least. I hope it will anyway. But then everyone gets access to that no matter what you do in the game. StarCraft or WoW MMO mixed swords? No. Star Wars is that. We don't need that. Although, I mean, if you think about it, they haven't done anything with any of their major titles for a while now, have they? They haven't done anything new with StarCraft or Diablo or Warcraft. So they are due a big... Obviously Overwatch was a big release, but that was a brand new title. Heroes of the Storm and Hearthstone have done very well, but they're like... I don't know, spin-offs really, aren't they? Not intended as major titles. You think they have to do it like ESO? As much as ZeniMax messes up sometimes, you think the targeting system is about the best you're going to get with an MMO on the console? I suspect so. I don't want to ever say yes because I don't know enough about it. But I suspect they would have to have something similar to ESO, yes. Whose development error on? Oh, World of Warcraft, presumably you mean. Well, my main issue with it is, and I've said this before, at the end of an expansion, there are certain characters that were major characters that aren't required for the next one, and they're just dropped. And sometimes they're picked up again a few years later, and there's never any thought given to what they're doing during each given expansion. Which means they then have to... So, at the moment, for example, they've got to come up with some bollocks that explains what Jaina's been doing. And I hope it wasn't supposed to be that video yesterday, what Jaina has been doing. Oh, hello. Let's get rid of that really quickly. And then let's get rid of the whole person really quickly. I think we'll do that one. Why is he still there? Will you go away? God almighty, why does YouTube make it so difficult to get rid of these arseholes? On Twitch it was easy. You click their name and it's ban. Expunge them from the channel. Stop letting them post things. YouTube, we've got to fill out a huge form in triplicate to get anything done. And I still haven't been able to ban them. I've just put them on a timeout. I don't think it's Asmongold. You wish you had people screaming that at you, dear. Dear me. Oh, it just says hide user on this channel. Oh, maybe I'll do that. Does that work? Yeah, okay. That might work more permanently. Where was I? Sorry, before we were rudely interrupted. No, I mean, I would agree, like, when it comes to World of Warcraft, in-game storytelling is always very poor, I think. But then, fortunately, what they do to redeem themselves is they get proper authors to write sensible novels so that we've actually got some rich content lore for the game itself. It's just it's never developed in the game. Let's have a look. Hold on, I'm missing stuff. Do you have an idea to increase the percentage from less than 1% to 10% with tuning? I actually don't. If you're talking about what we were talking about before, I don't really know. Because, I mean, just if we look at... Hold on, I'm going to... This applies to a lot of players, but if I just at the moment try and pick on Rets... Hold on, I need a graphic. Where would it be? BfA talents, okay. This is a bit old, so it's not quite accurate, but never mind, doesn't matter. So if I were to just look at, for Rets, so Zeal, passive, that's active, but you just use it on cooldown. So as long as you're able to track your abilities, there's not enough difficulty in that to mess it up. Passive, active, but, you know, doesn't make a big enough difference if you don't use it right. Those are stuns. Passive, active, but again, it's not terribly important if you use it right. Active, not terribly important if you use it right. Although if you use it on 5 holy power, that's a bit of a cock-up, I suppose. But still. I mean, that was already factored in with the less than 1%. Those are things, Passive, active, but has already been taken into account. So no, I don't think tuning will change things. But I don't know. But I don't think so. You doubt any conspiracies about WoW are true? Oh, you should doubt all conspiracies. Never believe any conspiracy ever. Even though conspiracies do exist, you should never believe them, because most of them don't exist. Vulpera can't be an allied race. They can be a race, but they can't be an allied race. Possible. I am suffering in the heat, yes. I have been sitting in ball soup for 2 weeks. It's not nice. In fact, really, it's been longer than that, but it's been particularly... Ironically, since I finished for work, it's got worse. Just at the time when I was all excited to be getting loads of stuff done, I just, like, can't get anything done. And even the lounge, which is normally my safe haven, because there's thick curtains over the window, I can keep the room fairly dark, but it's not stopping it. It's even warm in there when I go in the morning. Just give everyone the monk mastery. You get a buff every time you press a different button. Yeah, but then people will just like do... They'll just do scales on a piano, won't they? I'm not very good at scales. Will there be stat caps? Doubt it. You might get the odd breakpoint. Breakpoints even seem to be more rare these days as well, important breakpoints. So, yes, stop quoting me temperatures that are outside. Outside temperatures don't mean anything. Neither of us is outside. We're inside. The problem is that when people go, oh yeah, it's 46 degrees outside, what they actually mean is it's 46 degrees outside, but where I am, it's 20 degrees because I've got air conditioning. Here, it's 32 degrees where I'm sat. Even at 4 o'clock in the morning, at the dead of night, when outside it's a nice cool 15 degrees-ish, I'm going to guess, maybe a bit less, but at least that, it's still in my bedroom, because I have a thermometer in there as well, 31 degrees. At 4 o'clock this morning it was 31 degrees. Bloody hellfire. So it's too much. It's 35 degrees in your house, in your room. Well, that's just careless. If you live in a place that can get up to 46 degrees, you should have some form of air conditioning. But we don't have air conditioning because normally, I'm not kidding, we might get temperatures of about 30 degrees Celsius twice a year, like for a couple of days a year. That's standard. But here, we've had it for weeks. That is very unusual. It's not normally like that. You can't, it's not, money is not, obviously, well, money is an issue, but even if money were not an issue, I can't get aircon. Unless you're going to club together enough money for me to buy my own house that I'm allowed to modify. I rent this house, and I can't, because you need a seal. You can't just have an aircon unit and drape out the outlet out the window. You will waste so much electricity, it'll be untrue, because you'll be heating up the whole earth just to keep the room cool. You need the room sealed at the window, for which you can buy a seal quite cheaply, but you have to have it physically with adhesive fixed to the window frame. My landlord's probably not going to appreciate that. And I'm certainly, in the conditions of my lease, not allowed to do things like that. So yeah. In fact, if you'd like to raise 300 grand from me, I saw a very nice house in Nottingham, which would be quite close to Warhammer World. But my main plan is to win the lottery to get that. But yeah, so I'll just have to put up with it. You know, it can't last forever. My fear is that it will last all summer and waste my valuable time. But it can't last forever. Yes, they are yellow. It's got, let me find something. See if I can find something on the news. Hold on. There was something really amazing. Oh, I'm not going to be able to find it now, though, am I? Oh, here it is. Here it is. So let's have a look here. Because it is, yeah, the grass is all just yellow. So what do we want? Web page. This is on the BBC News. So this is like fields overhead. So what you can see here is there's an ancient settlement, you know, like 1,000-year-old settlement that's now visible because of that. There's a few other things as well. So basically people are discovering ancient settlements. There's a Victorian garden that was quite... Look, there's a whole like village type thing there. All of a sudden just visible because of the grass. Where was the... Oh, World War II airfield. Under a field. So you can see all the... where the planes were kept and the runways and stuff. And there's like a Victorian garden where the... like, there's the photo of what the Victorian garden used to look like. It's now just supposed to be grass, but you can still see, you know, with the yellowing of it, it's like it's showing up history. It's quite amazing. Have you just said alliance are ugly? Are you having a laugh? Horde are the ugly ones. In fact, they're supposed to be the ugly ones. That's why Blizzard have nerfed Arcane Torrent, because they don't want too many Horde players playing a pretty class. You've had rain the past couple of nights. No, there's supposed to be a massive thunderstorm on Friday. There's a weather warning and everything. And then there's supposed to be about 5 days of about 22 degrees weather, which that's all right. I can cope with that. After that, it's supposed to go up again, though. That's the problem. So, you know. And I'm not going to water the grass because I think that's... We haven't got a hosepipe ban where we are, but I just think it's a bit, you know, inconsiderate. Wasting water and stuff like that, because I don't even care about the grass. And apparently, according to people who know about these things, it'll soon grow back, like go proper green again as soon as the rain comes. Half the Horde of Blood Elves. Well, that's exactly what Blizzard want to knock on the head. They're sick of people playing the pretty class on Horde. They're supposed to be ugly, broken creatures, malignant tumours of the world. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Yes, but isn't there a larger quote for that? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. No, what is it? No, that's right. Beauty is only skin deep, but ugly goes right to the fucking bone. I'm pretty sure is what the quote is. Looks like Jaina is just as off the deep end as Sylvanas. Yeah, but Jaina doesn't have a load of people under her command. She's just super powerful. And she can raise ships from the ground. Yes, Jaina is crazy. Absolutely. We've known that for ages. I think some people will race change away from Blood Elves. It's just that Blizzard... I think some people are probably holding on because Blizzard said that racials have been taken off the global cooldown. Now, although Arcane Torrent has still been on it for a very long time, and I think most people are coming to the conclusion that they're probably meaning it to be that. Because they haven't officially said, yeah, we're keeping that on, some people I think are holding out vain hope that they might take it off and they're staying. But at some point, yeah, I think a lot more people will change. Because at the moment, when you sim, like for Ret Paladin's best race, Blood Elf is at the bottom. It's the lowest simming one. Amazingly. That's how bad it is. Not that it relies entirely on Arcane Torrent, you've also got crit, but still. It's... And there's not a lot of difference between the different races, I ought to point out as well. It's not actually worth race changing for it. But technically, it's at the bottom of the heap. You put a bag of ice in front of your fan. Yeah, so did I. It's melted now. It's water. But I think even water is still working because it's still working on evaporation. So I'm a little bit cooler on this side. My right side is now fairly cool. Left side, not so much. My arse, not so much either, because I'm sat on something. Belf nerf was because of MDI, was it? I don't know. Where am I? Sorry. Da, da, da. Do I think it's fair for the Nightborn to take a side? Yes, I do, because now that I've done the Nightborn starter quest, and basically, in the storyline, the reason they joined the Horde was because Tyrande was such a bitch. That actually makes sense. I agree with that. You know, I'm totally fine with that. I was less fine with the high mountain thing, but then you could argue, you know, Blood Brothers with the Tauren, all right, you go with that. Even though Sylvanas doesn't even want the Tauren in the Horde, she just sort of needs them. But under other circumstances, she said she thought she would rather they just join the Alliance. Whether that would mean the High Mountain would go with them, I don't know. But gameplay-wise, I'm sure it will never happen. You only went Horde with friends in Burning Crusade because of Blood Elves. You needed a race with proper posture. Well, even Orcs have proper posture now. So, you know. Everyone will be Space Ghost. No. Bane is your true war chief. Bane is a pathetic creature. He's always been told what to do. He even gets told what to do by people who are not the war chief. It's not even just like he takes orders from the war chief, because of course they all should do that. He takes orders from anyone who gives them. He takes orders from bloody, what's his name, Nathanos Blightcaller, for goodness sake. That dick. I mean, I don't always know why they do some things. I'm just... The only thing I can imagine with the Blood Elf thing is there are too many people playing Blood Elves. They want to readjust the balance. They don't want lots of people playing Pretty Horde. That's all I can think. They brought D3 to console as well, yes. Since there are lots of those developers currently working on the WoW development team, hint, hint, console WoW income. Well, I was talking about that earlier, wasn't I? But for other reasons. You feel like even the Troll Princess would push you with Bane. Everyone pushes Bane around because he allows them to do it. I mean, obviously, some of you will know better than me because I don't really played Horde much. Has Bane ever basically told someone to sod off? When someone said something to Bane that he didn't like, has he ever stood up for himself and gone, go to hell, I'm not doing that, piss off out of my sight before I smash you over the head with this tree trunk on my back? Because I have never heard him stand up for himself. Bane is a nice cow. He might well be a nice cow, but he gets pushed around. Liadrin is your war chief. She's not, well, she's part of the Order Hall, so she's supposed to be, you know, relatively neutral. No, Bane isn't British. He wrote sad letters to his pen pal. Yes, he did, didn't he? Do you mean he stood on a gnome once? Who hasn't stood on a gnome? I've stood on plenty of gnomes. Sourfang's honourable and proud of his heritage, but he still told Sylvanas to go and do one. Or he will do. He proposed a feast after defeating the Legion. I bet that was a hard sell. I've got a plan here, gents. What I'd like to do, right, is I'd like to basically put a shitload of food on this table and for all to sit down and eat it. I can't imagine there would have been too many protests from that one. Tauren a natural calm sentience. To be fair, not quite, because Cairn Bloodhoof stood up for himself, didn't he? He was mild, but he stood up for himself. Challenged Garrosh. I mean, it didn't work out too well, but he challenged Garrosh, didn't he? He didn't stand for any shit. You wouldn't rule out races swapping sides? I think I would, just from gameplay purposes. No one's going to like the idea of being a Tauren player for 15 years, playing World of Warcraft for 15 years, then suddenly being told they've got to join the Alliance. No, we'll not do that. Where we go? Well, anyway, we've got 9 o'clock, so I shall call it to there. Thanks very much for coming on. I will be raiding tomorrow, I suppose, so I shall be on Twitch tomorrow to do that. And looking forward to the apocalyptic rain on Friday, which should hopefully cool me down, because it's like the next 4 days I'll be streaming on Twitch. Cairn and last one then, to some extent Vol'jin were decent. They were disposed of, but they stood up for themselves. Both of them stood up to themselves. Bane didn't. Bane is a mouse. But anyway, yes, thanks for coming on, everyone. It was a good one tonight. I will put this up on YouTube later, of course. Thanks for coming on. I will see you later.